Howie Long. Howie, thanks for joining us. We're going to jump right in. Was bringing Mike McCarthy back the right move?
There was a lot to unpack after that game. I'm sure, like you guys, I was in shock. I saw Dallas making a deep run at the very least to the NFC Championship game, and I think Jerry saw the same thing. You know, the interesting thing is I've never viewed Jerry as kind of a sympathetic figure, but in that interview in the bowels of the stadium after the game, I felt sorry for Jerry. And, you know, I think he had to ask the question, do I want to kind of start this thing all over again? New coaching staff, you know, possibly, you know, someone who wants more input into personnel decisions, how the organization is run. Right now we have a coach who's won a lot of games for us over the last few years, and we've struggled in the playoffs. And I think you have to ask some internal questions. Is Dak the guy? And if he is, you're going to have to pay him. And there's two other guys in line, Micah and CeeDee Lamb, who you're definitively going to have to pay. And you can wait on that. But, you know, what are you going to do with Mike and his contract? He has 1 year left on the contract. You can probably do something where you make it somewhat palatable in terms of maybe a second year, something like that. But I think Jerry's got to make some decisions. I think the lack of a run game was important. Pollard, you know, I think was more of a complimentary back. Playing with light defenders in the box hurt them in a number of games. Dan Quinn struggled to kind of match LaFleur and Green Bay, what they were doing in their run game. And if you can run the football at this time of the year, you can have success, particularly in protection, and you've got a young quarterback.
Howie, I want to just stay here for a moment. You obviously work super closely with Jimmy Johnson, the coach that Jerry had that had the most success. And despite that success, or maybe because of that success, they had a tortured relationship for the better part of a quarter century. Obviously, Jimmy now, thankfully, finally in the Ring of Honor. Do you, knowing what you know about how that relationship worked despite the success, does that make you question whether or not that Jerry ever could have worked with Bill Belichick? And do you think that would have worked?
You're going to have to say that again, Nick. I lost you there for a second.
Do you think that that Jerry and Bill Belichick could have worked together?
Oh boy, I don't know that Jerry was necessarily prepared. Jerry, you know, he's omnipresent in that organization, both from a business standpoint and justifiably so. I think they've done a great job with personnel. That hasn't been an issue. What I'd like to see, and I'm not sure that Bill, if you talk about Bill's a lot like the old Raider teams that I had. There's a wall around the facility. No one gets in, no one gets out. It's all about football. There's no distractions. We were down there a couple of weeks ago for the Ring of Honor, and it's amazing. It's Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey Circus. You know, the stadium, the crowd, everything, people on the field. I remember going to a Patriots practice one year. I went up there to interview a player, and Burge came over and said, "Bill wants you to come out to practice if you have the time." So I go out to practice. I'm standing in the indoor facility, and you can hear a cricket. There's nobody in the building. And, you know, Bill comes over with the whistle, and he's spinning around his finger, and we talk a little bit. And, you know, it's all about football.
Yeah.
Is Jerry really that kind of, you know, responsibility to Bill? I'm not sure that was a good match. Although if Bill had come there, I think, you know, they would be a Super Bowl favorite.
Howie, I mean, as surprising as that Cowboys loss was, I think the Eagles game was more appalling because of the lack of effort. 13 missed tackles, guys running into each other. I mean, did that look like, I mean, you've obviously, you know, been in locker rooms and all that. Did that look like a team that had lost faith in its coach?
I think it's a team that went to a Super Bowl and lost. That's always a factor. I think it's a team that, you know, lost two very good coordinators and made two poor hires. And I think offensively, I think for 10, 11 weeks of the season, they could overcome that. And I think you've got a certain amount of gas in your tank as a team, and they spent a lot of gas winning those 10 games out of the first 11. And I think on offense, it was more about the system and less about the players. But on defense, it was a combined kind of shortcoming, both from a scheme standpoint and a personnel standpoint. And now they're left with the question if it's going to be Nick Sirianni and they're going to run Nick Sirianni back, and that's fine. And players seem to respond to Nick, but I think the team lost confidence in the plan as much as anything and came to the realization that we're not going to make the run here. That's not real. I mean, last year, the previous year when they made the long run and they had the great year, now they've got to kind of pack it all back up, and they've got to hire 2 coordinators. You're not going to get the top-tier coordinator. You're going to get a guy that's working for the guy. And, I think back to this summer. It was, ironically enough, it was Lane Johnson and Chris in my whaler out on the boat in Montana, and they pulled up, and they've got a 6-pack of beer or something in the boat. And
let's go.
The plug in the back of the whaler had come out, and the back end was almost submerged. After you bail it out and you put the plug back in, you kind of feel a little more confident. But who's going to go there? Is there too much water in the boat? Because if the head coach, if they have a bad year next year, the head coach is gone. Yep. And as a coordinator is coming in there, you're working on a 1-year lease.
Howie, before you go, I'm contractually obligated to ask you a question about Patrick Mahomes because, and we don't have time to play the sound, but Kyle, your son Kyle, was on Kevin Clark's podcast a couple days ago, and he said his year with the Chiefs, he would leave practice. He said there were at least 30 times he felt like he was at Area 51, seeing things he wasn't supposed to see, and would call you to talk about what he was seeing at practice. A, is that story true? And B, what are some of the things he would tell you about practicing and playing with Patrick?
No question. I listen. The boys call all the time. We're blessed to have kids that kind of want to call. Thankfully, we have grandkids, so I'm kind of invested in that. Kyle was blown away by Patrick and felt like Patrick was the closest thing in the NFL to Michael Jordan in terms of his competitive nature, his physical abilities, his die to try to win. And I think it was probably a week much like this past weekend where the wind's blowing and it's, 10 degrees. I forget which game it was the year that Kyle was there. And he was sitting out on the bench before the pregame started. And he's sitting there with one of the coaches and the wind's blowing 25, 30 miles an hour. And he turned to the coach and said, we're going to probably run the ball a lot more today, right? And the coach said, see that guy? He throws through the wind. Patrick is one of one. And, I don't know what that mountain you have is. And, I think right now, and I'm not sure what qualified people this week because Lamar didn't play, Purdy didn't play, but I think you have to put Patrick at the top because of the 2 Super Bowls and that. And I think, the next – that's right. Lamar's right there, who's probably going to win an MVP, and Allen's probably next up. And the 2 young quarterbacks, to me, are on the next level because I've seen what they can do in the playoffs.
Yeah, that's right.
I haven't seen what Purdy can do.
Oh, look at that. What a guy. I told you, Hall of Famers think alike. I'm with you, Coach. Mahomes at the top, Purdy at the bottom.
I want to qualify this by saying I do not think Brock Purdy is a game manager. He's running a complex system.
Thank you.
He's under extreme pressure. I think in games where he struggled within a game, for example, Cleveland, he struggled in Cleveland. Wet ball. I saw balls fluttering. He took that team on a drive that should have been the game-winning drive in Cleveland. The game versus Baltimore, they got mauled. Williams goes down. Half their offensive line goes down. He's got a stinger. They take him out of the game. 3 of the interceptions were tips. But what he did the next game, bouncing back, to me, says a lot about him.
But still, bottom of the mountain. We agree.
Well done, Howie.
And the 2 young quarterbacks, the 2 guys DJ love, it's like that mirror you have on the side of your car. If you've ever looked at the writing on it, it says, objects are closer than they appear.
Yeah.
Those 2 guys are coming and coming quick.
Yeah, they are.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
Howie,
great
thank you
stuff.
so much. You can see more of Howie on America's #1 pregame show, 7:30 on Fox.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get more from the show and to check out clips from other shows on FS1.